Hi, I'm Bill Arnold. Thank you for listening to this podcast of Real Recovery. There are many more podcasts available at myfaithradio.com. Your support makes this possible. Thank you. Hello and welcome to Real Recovery. Bill Arnold on this side of the studio, and just across the way, George P. Fraser, a man who's rich in personality. You know, actually, I wished you had some money. You might be more fun to go out with. George.
You know, money's not important to me, Bill.
So true, but you are rich in personality.
That too.
Yeah. Well, welcome.
Kind of short on that aspect, though, as I think about
times,
it.
At times. But welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We're delighted that you tuned in today, and we're also planning a really great show for you today. So sit tight. We're going to talk about step one and then get our guest on.
Step one. And step one is we admitted that we were powerless over drugs, alcohol, and that our life had become unmanageable. And the reason I wanted to do this step, Bill, a lot of us think when we have this big problem, it's our drinking, it's our gambling, it's our drug use. And when we stop that through God's help, actually through His getting us to wanting to do it, I think you have to be convicted by the Holy Spirit that it's wrong, and also get the hope that it can change, and that all comes from God. We get about 1 or 2 years into our recovery, and we realize that's not the problem.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is me. And a lot of us get into recovery and realize there's some mental health aspects there that we weren't okay with. I know for me that when I went to treatment the last time, I was diagnosed as having cocaine-induced psychosis. Well, one of the reasons I wanted to get sober is I wasn't okay with being mentally ill. Now, my life would show that I was very mentally ill. And I think any time you get outside of God's will and you choose to sin rather than obey God, that's insanity and mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, what I realized is I was a few years sober, and I called a friend of mine because I was getting my master's at St. John's, or St. Mary's. I don't know what's wrong with me today. And we were studying ADHD. And I called the guy, and I go, "Hey, Jimmy, we're studying attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I think I might have that." And he started laughing. He goes,
"Like me right now?"
He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You think you might have that? You have that worse than anybody I've ever met. I can't believe you didn't know that."
Yeah, I'm going to send Jimmy a check.
And I said, no, I never knew that. And I think for a lot of people, anxiety, depression, and I think for a lot of people that I've seen, they do all the right things. And a lot of times they try to be their own savior, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to memorize the whole Bible, and I'm going to do this, and I'm doing all this stuff, and it doesn't work. And they get worse. And the answer is not simple. It's tough work to change. I think if you get in enough pain, though, you're willing to do whatever it takes to change it, if possible.
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of Christians, they're shocked that there are things that they have to deal with because they've been good people all their life. They might have given their life to the Lord at age 6 or whatever, or 10, and they are good people. This affects everyone, Christians, non-Christians. And I think a hard part for me working with addicts that are Christians is they seem to think that that umbrella of salvation will protect them from everyday life's traumas, and I see that it doesn't. And we always go to the Bible on this show, and we look at Paul. He had a thorn in the flesh. We don't know what that was, but it caused him to struggle, and we all struggle, and Jesus said every day you have to pick up your cross and deny yourself daily, every day. And so I think, Bill, when we look at this, just because we're Christians, we're not perfect. And I go to Elijah in the Old Testament. Remember when the angel showed up and he got some rest, and he gave him some food?
Yeah. Told him to take a nap.
A nap.
Yeah.
You kind of look like if I keep going, you're going to zone off.
Well, I'm doing my best.
But I think a lot of people think they have to be their own savior and do all this work to do it, and that doesn't work. And I think what happens is problems can drive you to your knees, and maybe you're going to really experience a faith that you've had in your head and get it in your heart for the first time. You're going to realize how broken you are without Jesus, and that maybe the walk you've had before was good enough. But you need to take it to another level. And first of all, you have to turn it over to God and pray for the power, the strength, and the desire to deal with this.
Mm-hmm. George, you said a few minutes ago that you were dealing with mental health. How do you recover from a mental health episode?
Well, I also said I went to St. John's, I went to St. Mary's, so
right.
I don't know.
Yeah, you're a little confused.
How do you, I believe that for a lot of us, it's going to be an ongoing struggle.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to admit that your best efforts haven't worked and you need help. And you need to get medical help. A lot of times there's a chemical imbalance, that it's physical. And the reason I used the Elijah with the angels, they fed him and told him to get some sleep.
Mm-hmm. Pretty foundational stuff.
Yeah, and I think, well, my niece is a PhD prof at UCLA, as you know, and she's writing a protocol for the Department of Defense for women vets, and her big paper that she got published and really became a player on a large stage was treating PTSD. You need to get sleep before they can help you at all.
Wow.
And so for a lot of us, we get too busy, and we're trying to do good things, maybe help people, maybe you're in the ministry. You got to take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm. George, I always thought when it comes to step one, you can split that almost into two parts and say, step one is like, let's admit that you're powerless over drugs or alcohol. Let's just stop there.
Yes.
That's part one.
Yep.
And part two would be your life has become unmanageable.
Yes.
So you can say it in one sentence, but I think it's of value to break it up into two parts. What do you think?
That's very good insight, surprisingly, actually.
Thank you.
It is good. And I think we'd go back along those lines. What do you have power over? I mean, if God is sovereign, our next breath comes at the mercy of an all-sovereign God. You control nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. And that gives us the humility we should have and the reverence for God that we should have. But our life unmanageable, that's interesting. About 10 years ago, I was in Scottsdale, Arizona on a missionary trip for golfers in the spring. Remember when I used to do that?
Yeah.
Never raised a lot of support, still have a resentment. But the thing is, I met a gentleman who worked at a place called The Meadows out there, a very world-famous rehab center. And I was talking to him, and I said, you knew Dr. Paul, who wrote Acceptance is the Answer in the Blue Recovery book. If I had 5 minutes, what would he tell me about recovery? He was a Christian guy.
Mm-hmm.
He said, that's easy. He would take 30 seconds. The unmanageability, which is part B of step one, where we admit our lives are unmanageable, is whenever anything happens that you don't like, you're judging God. I go, what? Anytime something happens that you don't like, God allowed it. You need to get out of the judgment seat and get into the acceptance seat. I go, well, what about when a little kid gets cancer or something? He goes, great point. You can care about it, you can pray about it, but you have to let go and let God have the results. You don't know what he's doing as far as an eternal battle.
That's true.
You know, maybe one of the parents isn't saved and they will become saved. Well, I chewed on that for about 2 years, and I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. I believe it's in Matthew 7, it says, do not judge because the same measure you judge, you yourself will be judged. And I always thought, okay. But I think for me, the second part of that is when I judge other people, I'm really hard on myself, too. And I think what we need to do is get out of giving tickets out to God and everybody and taking their inventory because they're not doing it the way we should, and have the love and mercy of God, not diminishing the standards. And that ties into working on your problems in that, okay, I didn't choose to be an alcoholic or a drug addict. I didn't choose to have ADHD. But if I hadn't had it, Bill, I never would have become a Christian, and I never would have had a relationship with God. But what's my piece in it? I'm supposed to humble myself and have people I'm accountable to. I had a very good therapist. I suppose you could differ with that on the outcome. But for years, I have a mentor. I do what they tell me. And what I see, especially in the Christian community, aside from drug addicts, Christians will go, I know what to do. I'm going to do it. I'm okay. And it's like, no, you're not. Jesus says, apart from me, you can do nothing. Maybe he appointed people in your life that were studying at school when I was out partying that happened to be doctors and psychiatrists. God gave us the ability to reason. I don't think the other animals have that.
Mm-hmm.
And people can tell you that, hey, maybe you need this medication, and maybe you need to do this therapy, and maybe you need to get off the throne of being God in your own life and bend a knee and submit to the authorities in your life. And until I did that, nothing changed.
So good. So, George, in other words, if you're going to take step one, there is really nothing light and breezy about step one. This is a very serious and difficult step to admit to and to accomplish.
Yes, and as you say so eloquently, you really can't divide the steps. Because when I admit I'm powerless over drugs and alcohol, ADHD, anger, jealousy, lust, gambling, those are just a few, and my life is unmanageable, I have to come to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. Step two. And then in step three, make a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand it. And what that means to me is, of course, we understand him to be Jesus Christ because he is. John 14:6, I am the way, the truth, the life. No one comes to the Father except through the Son. That's the truth, he says, absolute truth, not kind of true, not sort of true. And I need to bend a knee and use the people that God put in my life to be accountable to and do what they tell me to do. My guys would all get sober if they did what they were asked.
No question.
And it took me 7 years to finally realize I couldn't do it my way.
Do you go back, if you do 3 rehabs in 7 years, George, do you go back to step one, saying it all over again?
I do it every day before I get out of bed. Bill, you know, I talk on this program. I don't ask my guys to do anything I'm not doing. The only reason I'm a Christian, Dave, is because I can't think of anybody who needs a
My name's
Savior.
Bill.
I was talking to Dave.
He's our guest. We haven't brought him on yet.
Okay, so he's not here.
Well, no, he's technically
Am I
not here
seeing
yet.
stuff again?
No, you're not seeing things. We
Okay.
just haven't introduced him yet, so he's not technically on the show yet.
So he's kind of like an imaginary friend? Okay.
Of which you have several.
Yeah, I do.
So this is A-OK.
I totally forgot what I was going to say.
Doesn't matter, but, you know, it's good radio at the end of the day.
It's realistic.
It's very realistic.
I think what I was going to say is you've got to go to step one. And I pray for the power, strength, and desire to stay sober today and be cancer-free before I get out of bed.
Nice.
And what I've learned is you go, are you that bad? Yeah, you know, I didn't used to think so. I don't look on it as, am I that bad? I look on it, or am I that needy?
Mm-hmm.
Apart from me, you can do nothing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I finally get it. And I used to read the Bible and go, glad I don't have that. You know, I can really help other people that do. Total depravity. No one is righteous, not one. All fall short of the glory of God. That applies to everybody who reads it, including me.
Mm-hmm.
And that finally got my attention to where I was willing to do it. But I don't think you do it unless you're in enough pain.
And, George, if I could make an observation, listening to you talk about step one is you have worked step one well because you have remembered the goal of the step.
Powerless.
Yeah.
God dependent.
Yes.
Yep.
So you know the goal of that step.
You're
not trying to wake up one day and say, all the work is going to be done by me today. I got this.
Oh, gosh, no.
No.
However, we do get during the day and go, okay, I got this. You know, I'll take it. I know you need to go help other people.
Yeah.
Constant contact, pray without ceasing.
Amen.
And I think if you do have a trial and you're hurting with something, it can be a real blessing. I know it was for me.
Mm-hmm.
Cancer was a real blessing. I don't want it to come back, but it really reaffirmed that what I believe in is true.
Mm-hmm.
You know, before it was kind of a nice thought, and I hope.
Mm-hmm.
Now I know it's true. And I would never have gotten sober. People, you know, and God bless them when they, you know, get a recovery date. How did you do it? Well, at 25 years, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. The fourth meeting I went to and got it. Even me, that shows you how messed up I am. But it was. It was my Academy Award. And on the way home, I believe God gave me the thought, how did you do it? You didn't do it. You didn't want to do it. Remember, you had to go to meetings so you wouldn't go to jail? You had to get your card signed? Hey, big boy, how'd you do that? And I started thinking, God changed my heart. It's all God. Nobody gets sober without God. Nobody gets medically healed without God. And certainly nobody gets saved without God. And he does it even if you don't give him the credit. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. We've got a great story tonight. Dave is here in studio, so I will mention his name and then bring him on after the break. But we are going to talk about recovering from mental health issues.
Can I stay, or does that disqualify me?
No, I don't want you going anywhere.
Okay.
All right. You're listening to Real Recovery with Bill and George. We've got a special guest, Wyatt, running the board. Today, we're going to take a very short break and be right back. Welcome back to the show. It's Real Recovery with Bill and George. Apparently, I go quite a ways back with our guest tonight, George. I think you do too.
Absolutely.
Because Dave was part of the prayer support. I want to say it was in 1992 when Billy Graham came to town. And I was part of the prison ministry outreach. We did, I think, 10 facilities. And Dave was part of the prayer support. So he was praying the whole time we were doing events.
You're kidding.
So he would be, I think he was there praying on behalf of everyone that was on the platform at each event. So it would be like 2 hours of intense prayer.
Was that cool? The one where Michael Card was at?
I don't know.
Billy Graham never came back after that, did he?
No, that was his last time.
Yeah, that was it then.
Yeah.
I went to that.
I did too.
It was stunning.
Yeah, it was good. So anyway, I had really a great time with a whole bunch of amazing people. We did, I think, 10 events at prisons throughout all of Minnesota. I mean, when Billy Graham comes to town, he wants to evangelize the entire state, including everyone who is incarcerated. So there's about 10 facilities in the state of Minnesota, and we did all of them. It was really fun.
So I could have heard it either way. Fortunately, he was out at that point.
Exactly.
He was so cool. When I first became a Christian, I read a book that Billy Graham had wrote, and I read it all summer, junior year of high school, Bill. Peace with God.
Yeah, it's a great book.
And it changed my life. But I always liked seeing him on TV and stuff because he had the hair going and he had the great voice, forever and ever, that. And it would like he's speaking for God. Mm-hmm. He had godly authority.
Yeah, he did.
Fair?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, good. But we're going to talk tonight about mental health, and sometimes you need to have recovery from that because you either have gone through it yourself or you have loved ones who have been in episodes of mental health, and you're just so concerned about how they will come out of that episode or that period of time. So we're going to talk to Dave about that today. Dave, welcome to the show. Whatever.
Thank you.
Yeah. Nice to have you here.
Good to have you.
Great to be here.
This campus and this environment is no stranger to you, is it?
No, sir. I worked here for 23 years.
Oh.
Went to school here. A lot of activities here. I visit all the athletic events. I did the public address for football for 40 years here.
What? You did?
Yep.
Yeah, well, that's impressive.
You look like a football guy.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that was a compliment, George.
It kind of is, it kind of scares me, though. Those football coaches in our day were real angry guys,
Yeah.
And so you're doing great.
All right, Dave, let's hear a little bit about your story and what caused this trajectory of what you would consider mental illness? Okay, yeah.
Okay. Well, I came to school down here at Northwestern, and my degree is in broadcasting, and my goal is I wanted to be the world's greatest Christian radio announcer, and my goal was to get to KTIS. And I grew up in northwestern Minnesota, and I thought I'd start at one of the outer stations in the Faith Radio Network. Well, before I even graduated from Northwestern, I was working at KTIS. I had the glorious hours at 10 o'clock at night till 5 in the morning, 5 nights a week, but that was my shift. And I did that for 2 years. And I had a side job working at Worldwide Pictures during the day. And so I was working a lot of jobs, and that was my way I operated all the way through school. But anyway, one day we had a going-away party, so I went back home after my shift and was coming back into work here at the radio station, and I fell asleep at the wheel, crossed 4 lanes of rush hour traffic, and the next thing I know, I'm sitting outside of the wheel of my car, and I don't understand or know where I am. And they brought me into the studio, and that started a time where I was just talking out of my mind. I was thinking I was the closest thing that God had to working here on earth with him. That was my sick mind that came out, and I thought I was just working for him everywhere I was going. And anyway, what happened was it was a horrible, horrendous year, and I'll just get into a few of the stories that occurred that year, and then what happened with the recovery.
Yeah, please do.
Well, so what they did, first of all, they just pumped me up with drugs, and they just felt that would help the recovery. Well, you'd get pumped up, and you'd be put in the hospital, and they say, okay, you're ready to go out. And after 2 weeks of being out, I'd end up back in again. And I was in 5 different hospitals over many, many times. But one time I was in the hospital, I don't know if people understand, but I'm going to explain. They brought me in, and I was aggressive. I was bipolar, as they diagnosed me with. And I was in manic states. I didn't get low as much as I got in the high state. And so people couldn't control me. Like George said, I'm not a little guy. I'm a pretty big guy. And they put me in a lockup unit where there's 4 people and the door's locked and you have a nurse in there. And I was becoming agitated. And they came in with a shot, and I thought I was getting the mark of the beast when they gave me the shot. So I blew up, and they had to grab security people, and there was one on each side of me, and they were going to put me in the padded cell, which was down the hall. And when I got out of the room and they were walking me to that room, I slammed the guy on my left, slammed the guy on my right. There was a guy in front of me. I blew him away, and I started running straight down that hallway, blew through the door, and slammed into the stone wall, and got knocked out and slit my throat totally apart, and just was bleeding all over, I guess. But the next thing I know, I'm in this padded cell, which is you're laying on the ground. There's not a bed. You're laying on the floor. There's not a bed. There's nothing in there. But they stitched me up, and they left me there. And I was convinced in my wounded, worn-out mind that I was in hell and that I was not going to see God ever again, and that I was condemned to life. And I don't know how long I was there, but I can tell you to this day, I can tell you the feeling that I felt laying in that room for however long, that I was separated from God, and there was nothing that was going to bring God back into my life at that time. And that's what my warped out mind was telling me. And so I just gave up at that point. And so then you recover a bit. And the most humiliating thing that I've had in my life, or one of them anyway, they put me into the next recovery room. And ever been in a straitjacket? It's a whole lot
Only
of fun.
for entertainment purposes.
Okay. Well, I'm sure it was entertaining for some people, but not for me.
Mm-hmm.
But that was horrible. I mean, I was in that for days, and so you had to be fed. Everything that you needed to do in your life was controlled by other people. But eventually I got out of there, and that was just a horrible experience. And then later on, I was in another hospital, and when I was there, believe this or not, it was a locked-up unit, and I escaped. I can't even tell you how I got it, and I had my checkbook with me.
Way to go, Dave. Huh?
I know. It sounds like Rambo, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Busting out of
He's
the county jail.
Were the alarms going off and everything?
No, they didn't know I was gone.
Beautiful.
I did a great job. And I called a cab, and I headed to the airport, and I started flying all over the country.
What?
Yep. And I just had it. I was in my sick mind again. And then I ended up in Denver. And if you know where the Denver airport is, it's 10 miles from downtown. I didn't have any money. I started walking. And this guy picked me up, and I said, I don't have any money. I need to go to a cash checking place in the morning. He said, stay with me tonight. I'll bring you there. And when I look back, I'm sure he was going to rob me after I got the money. But when I went to the check cashing place, they called back to Minnesota, and they said, you got to grab him. There's an all-points bulletin out for him. He's a man missing, and we've now found him. And so They put me up, and this was maybe the most humiliating time I've had in my life. They put me up in Denver General Hospital, and they didn't put me in the psych ward because I was just rolling over overnight. They put me in the cardiac care unit with all the beeping going on, and they handcuffed my leg to the bed. And the most humiliating thing that I had in my life was when the doctor came by in the morning. He was giving me a tour of about 10 to 15 Japanese doctors, and they said, here we have a mental case from Minnesota, and we're shipping them back later today. And it just pierced my heart, and I said, I am not a mental patient. Every person in this world is worth it. I knew that at that time, but it rang true and hard in my heart that every person in this world is worth it. So when I came back, and I had been up and down with these meds for almost a whole year, and they flew me back to Minnesota. They cleaned me of all the drugs that I had in my body, and then they put me on shock treatment. And if you're not already blurred in your mind, when you get shock treatment, you get a bit more blurred. And so things were not that normal yet. Anyway, but back then, in 1980, there was a brand new drug that was called lithium, and it was used in England. And the doctor said, we'd like to try it. And if it doesn't work, your insurance is out, and you'll have to go to the state hospital in Minnesota for mentally ill. And back then in 1980, if you were put in that hospital, you never got out. That's a little different today, but back then the odds of you getting out were about 0.5%. And so those were my choices. They were going to put me into the state hospital, or I could try that medicine. And thank the Lord for doctors, but I believe God can heal you miraculously, and he can also use medicine, as been shared here today. And this lithium has put me on the even keel. And if people may describe me as normal since that time, I have been able to live a life. But at that time, I thought everything was gone. My wife and I, we just thought that we would never have a normal life, that we were going to live through this cycle time after time, feel good, get up, get out, and then feel bad again. But that cycle ended when I started taking lithium. And what most people don't realize in mental health cases is that when you start feeling good, then you stop taking your medication. Well, I have never had a problem in 40 years of taking this medication. And so lithium has kept me on the even keel since that point. So it was a rotten, horrible year. Like I say, my mind was gone. And all I can say is the most precious thing that God can give you is your mind. And my mind was gone. And so what I realized in my life at that time was that I looked back and I said, you know what? Maybe perhaps I was thinking that I was really good striving for that job in radio. But what taught me then and there, and for the rest of my life, I could realize, because I am not God. I lost my mind, but the God of the heavens restored that mind to me. And I have no problems saying it's what God has done. It's not what I have done, because I have lost my mind. And I have recovered from that. And if it's okay, I would like to share some stories.
We'll take a break and continue our discussion when we come back. Dave is our guest today, and you're listening to Real Recovery with Bill and George. We're talking about mental health tonight. There's been such a huge amount of mental health issues, even today, George, associated with addiction, right? This is not Dave's story, but
addiction is a mental health issue.
Addiction is a mental health, yeah. So we'll take a break and be right back. We're back with Real Recovery. Bill and George. Dave is our guest tonight, recovering from mental health issues. What a story, George.
So am I.
I know you are, but we're talking about Dave tonight.
Yeah, but I think there's a lot of people who are, and I think one of the stigmas with a lot of people that have it, especially Christians, is they're not okay with having it. They must be doing something, and so they do try to be their own savior, and then they don't get a good outcome.
They don't get the proper treatment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said something about the medication, and I'm really glad you did, about the lithium, and we were talking on the break. Almost 100% of the guys that I've had that go on antidepressants come to me a few months later and say, I don't need to take these anymore.
So they must be working because they're feeling better.
Everybody. And a guy that I entered with, Dr. Steve Helgeson at University of Minnesota Fairview, said when they ask you, tell you that, you ask them, what medical school did you go to? And the point is you're trying to be your own doctor. And for a lot of us, there was a time when we were trying to be our own God and doctor.
Yeah. I have a friend who's a doctor, and he's got a coffee cup in his office that says, I will trust my medical degree over your Google search.
I like that.
I do too. Because everybody walks in telling him what their problem is.
Well, we're all experts now.
They're all experts, yeah. But Dave, before the break, you talked about sharing a couple of stories. We want to hear stories.
All right. Well, when I was sick, I was working at Worldwide Pictures. I had to resign from KTIS, but they said, you get better, and when you are better, we'll give you a full-time job. So I'm so thankful for Worldwide Pictures, which is Billy Graham Films. And along the way, I started becoming the driver, and then Amsterdam 86 started. That's when they trained third world evangelists overseas in Amsterdam, and it was a wonderful project. I did a lot of fundraising for it, and I guess got recognized for that. But what really happened was I saw what a crusade coordinator was for Billy Graham and his associates. And I went up in my prayer room for 4 straight months, and I didn't tell anybody. And I said, Lord, I would like this job. And it was interesting. So I got called into this office one day. This guy said, how would you like to be a crusade coordinator? And the first thing out of my mind is, I'm a mental illness patient, and but anyway, that didn't faze him or anything, and I became a coordinator for Crusades, and it was my most favorite job I've ever had. To see people coming to Christ, how can you beat that? And I'll get to a story though. My first crusade was in Aberdeen, South Dakota. My speaker was John Wesley White, and anyway, it was youth night, and I thought that youth nights at the Associate Crusades were a little dull. Let's put it that way. I thought that we could liven them up a little bit. I knew Donald Duck, so I thought I could sing Jesus Loves Me and Donald Duck at the crusade, and so I did that. But also, the crusades are designed for people just don't happen to show up. They are brought there by friends. And it's based on the first chapter of John, 40 through 42, the verses, when Andrew found Christ, he went and got and brought his brother Peter to Christ. So for a year before the crusade is going on, we have people praying, and then they invite them to the crusade. And 97% of people who accept Christ at the crusades were brought there by a friend. And so I had this 25-pound salted nut roll from Pearson Candy Company, and I went to as many churches on that Sunday as I could, and I said to kids 12 and under, if you bring a friend and they can't be from your church, you can win this candy bar. Well, so we had tons of people signing up, and there were 600 people at the crusade, and there were about 250 that were kids the night of the night we gave away the candy bar. And, everybody was having fun, but John Wesley White could speak for 70 minutes without one note, and he was very relevant. That night he stopped after 2 minutes of speaking at the most, and he felt the presence of the Spirit within him, and he said, I want you to come down and accept Jesus Christ as your personal Savior right now. And I'll never forget the stats. 132 people came forward that night. 118 were kids, 12 or under.
Wow.
And it was just a marvelous night. And one of the most amazing things was we didn't have enough counselors. We were not ready for that, so they had to counsel multiple people. And there were 4 little girls on the side of this stage, and I was running around trying to help people out as I could. And anyway, I saw this lady lead the first girl to Christ, the second girl to Christ. And when she got to the 4th girl, I was walking by, and the little girl goes, you don't have to. I already did it when the other girls were led to Christ. And it was just such a precious night. But here I'm thinking, this was 1987. So I was sick in 1980, and it took a couple years to get going again. But 5 years after I was locked up, after I was told I was a mental case being shipped back to Minnesota, the guy with the all points bulletin after him, I can't say enough of the fact that God allowed me to be a part of things that were happening in his spiritual realm. And I just can't say enough about the Billy Graham Association and what they do. I was telling George this is a little story. I thought they were so wise. When Franklin Graham started preaching, he came to our crusades, John Wesley White crusades, and he had his own plane, and he'd fly in and he'd spend 3 days with us, and then he'd take off again and do his work with Samaritan's Purse. Well, the first time I was told to call him, man, I was a little nervous. I mean, I'm calling Franklin Graham here. What am I going to say or do? Well, anyway, I called the office, and I say, is Franklin there? Dave here to see him or talk to him. And she says, oh, he's in prayer. Oh, okay, I'll call back later. Click. Well, then I find out the name of his plane is Prayer. And so...
Did you get it, Billy's in the plane?
I just figured that out, George. Yeah. Thank you for helping me connect those
you
dots.
look like you were going back and forth in your head.
Yeah, I was thinking, how long is he going to pray?
But I mean, let's step back here. And by the way, I'm wondering who got the candy bar, just out of curiosity.
Well, it was 2 7-year-old kids, and the whole auditorium was cheering because they were trying to balance this down the steps, and the whole audience was just into it, and and there was 2 7-year-old boys, and yeah.
What a great draw. So just to recap, we got a guy here who is chained, cuffed to his bed, who left the mental hospital.
Escaped from the mental hospital.
He left, Bill. He didn't escape. But yeah, he's an all-points bulletin.
Yeah.
He's a fugitive.
Maybe that's escape.
America's Most Wanted.
Okay. And
then a few years later, he's directing crusades. There's only one way that can happen, and that's God.
Mm-hmm.
It's always so good to hear those stories. We know that God can do anything, but they really help our faith to hear them, Dave. So
and
thanks.
If you think your life is damaged goods, it's not.
Good point.
Amen. Yeah.
I never thought that even when it was. so, well, yeah, God, there's never an end with God. Bill, you bring up a really good point. If you're listening tonight and you think it's over,
it's not.
With God, he will judge that and decide when it's over. And if your heart's still beating, you got time.
Well, then what happened was it took us 8-9 years to pay off our medical bills for all these hospitals. So we didn't have any children to begin with. And so after we paid them off, it was amazing. And thank God again for restoring things. But the first month we tried to have a child, my wife got pregnant. And so pretty soon we had 2 kids, and I was on the road 200 days a year for the association. And I was thankful for that, but there was one more thing that was more important to me than working for the Billy Graham Association, and that was to be a father. And a father is not on the road 200 days a year. He's home every night, or maybe he travels once a week or a couple, travel a bit, but 200 days a year, that is a ton of time away from home. So I made the choice to leave the Billy Graham Association in 1989, December. And this is where I met George, because I began working at Hospitality House Boys and Girls Clubs.
Correct.
And this was 1990. And one of the stories that I like to share about this is Hospitality House is designed, is still around this day, to reach kids for Christ before they get into trouble. And, we use athletics, academics, everything. We just really appreciate working with good products to present Christ through all these issues. But I was the director of Hospitality House, and we closed down at 9 o'clock. And I thought, we got to get these gang guys off the streets for a little while anyway. So I decided we call it midnight basketball at 9 o'clock. They'd be in the gym for 2 hours and at least off the streets for that long. The second night we had it, and none of my staff would work it with me, but second night we had it, middle of June, a big storm goes through North Minneapolis, and all the power goes out. There's 35 to 40 guys in the gym, and when the power goes out, they say it's rumble time. Let's get Dave. Well, my whole life flashed in front of me.
And that's where we're going to pause and take a break and then come back and hear what happened to Dave at rumble time. Right, George?
Let's go right now.
No, we got to take a break. I know you want to go now, but we're not going to go now.
On the break?
No, we're going to go after the break.
Okay. Just checking.
I don't have to spell this out anymore, do I?
Yeah, you do, actually. I keep asking you.
We're going to go on break.
Aren't we there yet?
No,
Yeah.
we're going to go on break. And then when we come back from break, we're going to hear what happened to Dave on Rumble Night.
I want to see Rumble Night, yeah.
All right. You're listening to Real Recovery with Bill and George. We'll be right back. It's Rumble Night. You're listening to Real Recovery with Bill and George. And right before the break, Dave was talking about what happened. 35 gang members in a gym, power goes out, and it's time to rumble. And rumble on Dave. What happened, Dave?
Well, they came walking towards me, and the first ones stopped where they were about a foot away from me. And I just said, Lord, you need to help me. And I don't memorize scripture the way I should, but Psalm 56:3 came to me. When I am afraid, I will trust in God. And I said, Lord, you can take it. Now, I don't know if they were oppressed or possessed, but up in the corner of the gym, all the demonic forces were pinned, and they stopped, and they parted their ways, and I went to the door, and every one of them shook my hand and said, get these lights fixed. I'll be back in 2 nights.
Whoa.
Very cool.
So, the power of God.
Very cool. We've been down there.
I've been down there a bunch.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that, and maybe one quick story more from Hospitality House that means a lot to me. I'd speak at churches on Sunday mornings and share the Hospitality House story, but I don't hear verbally from God, but I get impressions of what to do. And I was preparing the lesson, and I was impressed to share my story instead of sharing the Hospitality House story. Well, unbeknownst to me, I shared my story, and I told them that you need to keep taking your medicine. And there was a small church, 60 to 70 people. They all came forward to the altar afterwards. 2 young men, the same age I was at 24, were in that church, and they were not taking their medicine, and they were dealing with mental issues, and all the relatives around them it was just a wonderful experience, and how, I mean, the Lord only knows how He lines these things up. That's all I can tell you, and I'll tell you a couple. Then I went from Hospitality House, and then I got recruited to be the alumni director at Northwestern University of St. Paul. And I came here, and then I worked in the athletic department as the athletic fundraiser. And there were many, many stories, but a couple pertain to Morris, Minnesota. Got any stories for Morris? Or want to hear?
Just a couple, but go ahead.
Okay. My 2 boys were playing baseball for Northwestern, so we went up, and one of the things that I do in my life is prayer walk. When I was traveling for Billy Graham, when I traveled for the alumni director, if I ran across a Mormon Tabernacle, Jehovah Witness, Masonic Temple, I would pray around them. I prayer walk, leaving it up to God, whatever He wanted to do, but stopping the power that was causing these people to be interfered with in hearing the gospel message. Well, anyway, we stayed in this hotel the Friday night because the games were Friday and Saturday. And right next to our hotel was a Jehovah Witness church. So I went and prayed around it. And when I was praying around it, I became impressed. There was a family named Webbers in Morris, Minnesota, who sent 3 daughters to Northwestern, and they ran track here. And I've never met the family or nothing. And before the games on Saturday, we went into this store, and I just said, I got to see this Mr. Weber. And so I went up to the counter. I left my wife shopping, which works out pretty good. But I said, ma'am, do you know where the Webers live? And she pulled out the phone book, and she says, right here. I said, Barb, I'm going to be back in 15 minutes. I went to the Weber household. I had my Northwestern paraphernalia on. I said, Lord, I sure hope this is right. I'm a little nervous here. But anyway, knocked on the door. I said, please have Mr. Weber come to the door. And he came to the door, and I said, Mr. Weber, I have a message for you. You're supposed to get involved with the Jehovah's Witnesses. He says, well, that's interesting. He said, we go to the Free Church. I will put this in our prayer team, and we will be praying about that. But I just retired from my job, and I took a part-time job, and on either side of me, the two men are Jehovah's Witnesses. And
very cool.
Now, I don't know if I heard that correctly. You told him that he has to get involved with the Jehovah's Witnesses as an ambassador of Christ.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Not that he should join and become a Jehovah's Witness.
Get involved in turning their lives around.
That's what I think someone might have heard, so I just want to make that clear.
Okay.
That's incredible.
And another thing that I've happened in Morris is our volleyball team, every time they go up there, they will not let our team pray on the court and so on and so forth. The University of Morris is a challenging campus. And for years, when the volleyball team would go up there, one girl would be so disturbed spiritually that they would not be able to function on the volleyball court. And so my daughter-in-law, and I'll brag a little bit, she was the first All-American that we had here at Northwestern. She was then an assistant coach, and I was working as the athletic fundraiser. I taught her how to prayer walk around that volleyball court. And I mean, you can prayer walk anywhere. But anyway, taught her how to do that. And then I called up everybody who had athletes within 50 miles of Morris that came here. And I called the parents and I said, you need to pray. It's all prayer. And since that point, 12 years ago, when she prayed around that court, there has not been one disturbance spiritually with the volleyball team that traveled to Morris, Minnesota. God works in such powerful ways, even fun, I shouldn't say fun ways, but and then the other one that was interesting to me when I was getting laid off here 10 years ago now, because they were eliminating people from each department. You can eliminate the athletic fundraiser, but if you eliminate a coach, you have to hire a new coach. So I was gone. And so they asked me to see, I sold advertising. I had 36 clients out here, and they asked me to say goodbye to all of them. So I'm driving to say goodbye, and I was at this credit union where we banked, and our manager was in a wheelchair. And I had heard she had taken a spill and hurt her leg. And I'm driving by, and I said, I am mad at Northwestern. I'm mad at you, God. And I am just mad because of what's happening. I'm having to leave Northwestern for the second time. And anyway, I said, I'm not going to see her, even though you're telling me to. Well, I went and met with this other client of mine. I'm coming back, and I thought, if I don't go, you know, when God tells you to do something, you need to do it. Anyway, I went in, and she said, I said, I'm here to pray for your leg. And she said, no, you're not. I said, you're not? No, my mother just dropped dead of an aneurysm, and you're here to pray for that. And when I was done, she said, this was the most impactful half hour of my life.
Wow. Great story, Dave. Thank you for coming on the show and sharing what God has journeyed you through and alongside you every step of the way. Appreciate it. All right, George, that wraps up our show.
Great show.
Yeah.
Great show.
Yeah,
thanks, Dave.
Yep.
Thank you for tuning into Faith Radio and the Real Recovery Show. If you're new to Faith Radio, you can learn more about us at myfaithradio.com. And if you have someone in your life that maybe is in a mental illness situation, there is such hope from this episode. You can go to the podcast and send it right on to them. You can text it to them or email or whatever you want to do. We want to pray for you. We all need prayer. Share your prayer requests with us anonymously and securely on our website at myfaithradio.com. Have a great night. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. Programming like this is made available through your support. Information available at myfaithradio.com.
On the latest episode of the Wild God Stories podcast, we go to Africa.
I was raised in Sierra Leone in a community that truly lived the phrase, it takes a village.
Until one day, the world outside Anita's village broke in.
I didn't grow up in a war zone, but I watched one unfold in the country I love.
God brought hope to her story and many others through radical provision.
God began to direct us towards Uganda, Africa.
I was born and grew up in the countryside of Ethiopia.
Nanj and I met in Kigali, Rwanda.
Discover how God showed up in the middle of war, loss, and impossible odds in Africa. Stories that'll make you say,
Wow, God.
Wow, God.
Wow, God.
Wow, God Stories, wherever you get your podcasts.